Broadcasting from Baltimore, Maryland, this is 5x3 Radio, where strength is for everyone. I'm your host, Emily Sokolinski, owner of 5x3 Training, a strength and conditioning gym in Baltimore, along with my co-host, Rebecca Fishburne, founder of Cornerstone Strength Maryland. Each week, Rebecca and I will discuss the ins and outs of strength training, why there is a no one-size-fits-all approach, and why strength is so important in our daily lives. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now, on with the show. Oh.
You know Noodle? Noodle the pug?
Yeah.
On TikTok?
Okay.
I don't need him. I'm having my own Bones Day.
It actually was a Bones Day today.
Oh, and Sadie says it actually really is a Bones Day today, but I called it before. It before Noodle.
You're ahead of the game. You're ahead of the crowd already. I'm
totally ahead of Noodle because we had like some weird schedule thing, and today's my heavy deadlift day. Mm-hmm. So I was either going to have to do heavy deadlift in the afternoon, which never goes well for me because I'm too tired by then.
Right.
Plus, I've eaten too much for my belt to fit comfortably by that point. So I like to do my heavy squat and my heavy deadlift in the morning. Uh-huh. I don't like to do it at 6 a.m., but that was kind of my choice.
Right.
I could do it at 6 a.m. or I could do it in the afternoon with like a lunch belly. So I chose 6 a.m. and I'm going to tell you, I went to the gym to do it.
Oh, wow.
The racquetball club, because I'm not going to heavy deadlift in my house while everybody's asleep. And so I was super efficient because I didn't really want to be there.
Right.
6 a.m., the annoying old men aren't there yet. Just the not annoying old men. And on top of that, like, there's a discrepancy in weights between my weights and my set of weights. Like my weights are heavy.
I believe it.
Right? Like my 45, I weighed one of my 45s. It weighs 49. Right?
Yeah.
Right. So significantly heavy. So I went there and I even loaded more weight onto my deadlift than I meant to sort of address this discrepancy.
Right.
And it was like easy breezy. And I was worried about that because it was 6 a.m.
Right.
And then I didn't want to be there. I was super efficient. And I also got my squat done. Yeah. So like by 7 o'clock,
you're done.
I was done.
Lovely.
Heavy deadlift, volume squat. I made a couple of the guys feel uncomfortable because I was clearly stronger than them. And I was like, this is such a Bones Day. Yeah.
Excellent. Oh, good. I caught you on a good day.
How about you? Are you having a Bones Day?
Actually, yes. My press was good. I pin pressed today, and my pin press went very well. I figured out how to pin press. It only took me how long to finally figure it out, but I figured it out. So it keeps going up. I keep hitting triples. It was good. Eleanor called me in the middle of my workout, so I chit-chatted with her as I finished. I just kind of walked her on the phone. She was homesick. She was fine. You know, just a little cold.
I got Sadie homesick today too. That's why she's in the background chiming in about Noodle.
just a cold. Before we start today's podcast, I actually want to read an email from one of our listeners, one of our main listeners, because he emailed me right before we actually recorded the previous podcast, The Psychology of Lifting. Mm-hmm. And he said, if you haven't recorded the psychological episode yet, a thought came to my mind. I imagine you will discuss this, but for me, when I was going through the novice linear progression, as the weight got heavy and each session would be a PR, I would become increasingly anxious, excited on lift day. This let me use the tools I use getting ready to go to a shift in the ER, he's a doctor, or line up for a bike race. And those two, and in the LP, every day is game day. You never can simply just show up. Yeah. One thing I would do sometimes for a squat or bench was to overload the bar before the first work set. I don't know if you've done this. Maybe you
haven't, but I read that email and I was like, oh, that's very
Yes. Nice. Say I was squatting 250. I'd get 300 on, get under the bar, unrack it, step back, then re-rack the weight, and made the work set seem more doable and less intimidating. When we would do this, my son and I would always remind each other or ourselves, now you are just unracking, don't squat.
Important.
So that's something that's something we didn't talk about. About just kind of like overloading the bar, putting a little bit extra weight on the bar, because then when you take the weight off, that set feels, so much easier. But that's a nice way of kind of approaching your lift for the day. Just put some weight on it, because then psychologically and your brain will not, won't understand what you're doing. It does feel lighter. Sometimes it doesn't, but
Well, I mean, essentially that's what happened with me this morning, right? Like my weights at home are heavier than the weights in normal gyms, because they're old off of eBay or whatever.
Right.
So, and I did the same thing last year before the Stronger Together meet, purposefully then. And I sort of was thinking about that this morning with like a 6 a.m. lift. I was like, I knew when I got in there, it was going to feel better than I expected.
Right.
Which I also figured was going to counteract the feeling that it was worse than expected because it was 6 a.m. I was like, I think I'm going to come out on neutral ground. But I did that with the meet last year. I was like, okay, I know at home the weight that I can deadlift, and I'm pretty sure I can actually deadlift 5 pounds more than that if I'm using accurate weights.
Right.
But yeah, and that's like, I mean, like if you have an overload lift, right? That's the concept behind it, like a rack pull or, just whatever overload lift you might be doing. But to do that at the start of a set before a heavy set that sounds to me like a really good in the moment strategy for that particular day. Yeah,
especially if you're kind of anxious and you're not, and obviously he's just walking it out. He's just feeling the weight on your back. And I know that, following Jen Thompson, the renowned bench presser, Jen often, I guess coming up, like as she's in training, will load up a heavy bar and then just have her spotter unrack it with her, and she just holds it. She doesn't bench it. She just holds that weight in her hand just to kind of feel feel that weight in her hands. And I mean, I know that I've done that in the past before. Diego has suggested, just put weight on the bar and then unrack it and just walk it out and kind of hold that weight, because the body then starts to understand, what heavy weight feels like. And, and it is more of a mental aspect of the training than maybe even physical. So I like that. It was a very nice email you saw, right? Very nice.
I like that description too, the way the LP ends for a lot of people, like psychologically, like what ends up happening. Because I remember, like, I would drive up to Baltimore when I was on my LP, and I was lifting all of my lifts up there initially, and like I would spend the whatever it is 25-30 minute drive. Like the closer I got, the more my heart was pounding, the more like the sweatier my palms were getting. It was like I was having full on, like I was on the edge of panic attacks by the time I walk in the door.
And you wonder, that kind of goes along with why do we put ourselves through that? Like, what's the point of freaking out over going to the gym? And I'm using my fingers as like quotes for those who can't see, obviously, because we're on a podcast. there's no video. But why does it make us feel that way? Why do we have to get so worked up? So many people could be like, what's the point?
Well, I mean, also like the listener was talking about using the mental skills that he has employed in the past before races, right? So actual like game day, or before going into surgery, before doing something stressful. It's something, I mean, it's just something like you care about it. You want to do well.
Exactly.
I think, people in general, if they're doing something, they want to do it well. They don't want to let themselves down, or sometimes it's like let the coach down. It's like a misperception a lot of times on people's parts. But it's totally,
and it's
a natural and understandable feeling.
Yeah, that's why I said
managing it is key.
Yeah, that's why I said, that at the episode that we recorded, I mean, Mike, I'm like, we could talk about that forever, because there's so many more aspects to it. I was talking to one of my lifters last night, and she's been really busy at work lately. She runs a printing company. She's the one who does all of our T-shirts and our sweatshirts, and she has a big, I'm like blanking right now. There's a new business going in, not too far from us. And she has their business printing T-shirts and sweatshirts and mugs. I mean, it's a huge job, big job. It's consuming her. It's been consuming her for the past 2 months. So she's been missing her sessions. So we finally decided, she's like, I'm not gonna be able to make it in 3 times a week like I used to. She's been with us for a year. So we got down to two sessions a week, and I'm having her do some extra stuff just to kind of get 2 big lifts in, just to cram it in for that hour that she's there. Because I want her to, I think the other work that to do with her just will help her keep her going, keep her mentally going. And she came in last night, and she was so, you could see right away, she was so depressed a little bit because she started to press, and she's like, why does that feel so heavy? And it was 50 pounds. And I kind of had to, we talked, and I said to her, look, you're complaining about 50 pounds being heavy. When you first started with us, you barely could press 30 pounds. And she's like, oh yeah, you're right. So we went back, we looked at her book like from a year ago, and and I said, yeah, have you lifted more weight? Has it? Sure. But I said, but right now work has taken over, another stress has taken over. You've got to give yourself a break. You've got to come in here, we will do what we can do. We're going to get the work in. It's better that you're showing up, and you will come back to that. And when you have the time to come back to it, it will, you will continue. She's like, well, will I be able to pick up where I left off? I said, absolutely. And better, you'll use this time right now just to drill some things, work on technique, focus on this, focus on that, don't worry about the weight. That's not where we are right now. We can't do that. When when the job is taken care of and business comes back down to a more normal, doable level for you, we get back in 3 times a week, then yeah, we'll start to focus on those strength gains right now. I said, but you're squatting 135, and she said she's a petite, she's tall, but she's a petite, woman. I said, you're doing great compared to where you were a year, when you first started with us after having done a couple of years of CrossFit. She's like, yeah, you're right. I only ever squatted 115 like one time during the how many years I was at CrossFit. I said, and you've been with us for a year, and you're throw 135 in the bar and bang out some reps. I said, so she's like, and afterwards, and before she left, she said, thank you so much. I really needed that because I was going to go home and I was going to beat myself up and I was going to be depressed. And even her husband said, yeah, she was going to come home and I was going to have to hear about it. And so that's part of it. That's a part of the psychological aspect. Like she herself, not having someone to kind of talk her through it would have been just, upset and it would have been enjoyable. And she might have even just decided, what am I doing? What's the point of me even coming to the gym? Well, there is a point. There is a point.
Yeah, it's like either way, like whether you're in a season of having to cut back because of life's demands, or if you're on that LP, right? Like what's happening is you're mentally adjusting your perception of what is heavy.
Yes.
And it's situational and it's individual, and it's obviously a lot more fun to be adjusting your expectations of what's heavy upward instead of downward. Like it feels better. It's more self-affirming or empowering or whatever. But it's a process either way.
And it was good that she really did. I mean, she heard me. We talked it through, and we laughed about it, and we looked back. Like I said, we looked back at her book, and I showed her, look how far you've come. Seriously, like, don't sweat this. This is just one moment. You've got how many more years of this? And she left. She goes, I feel so much better. Thank you. And I said, you're welcome, because that's part of it. That's part of me having to see somebody who, the minute she said, why does this feel so heavy? I'm like, I got to tell her, right away before she keeps going. We have to have the talk. And I've had that talk before, the talk. I've had that talk before. And that's an important aspect of this type of training too. And I feel like this kind of leads in.
Oh, it totally does. Yeah, because it's like you merge the two situations. What if you have that
Do you see that
situation where you are? Yeah, that was very smooth, Emily.
I thought
so slick. But like if you have that situation where your life places unexpected demands on you while you're on your LP, and you've heard all these things or read all these things about the gains you're going to make on your LP, and you're expecting something very systematic, and that's how it begins, right? Each time you show up, you add 5 pounds. You do the lift. Next time you come back, you add 5 pounds. It just progresses that way, and then until you have that to 2.5 pounds, but you're still making that linear progress. And then you sort of, I guess, expect at some point maybe it's going to start to tail off, and then maybe you do a reset, or you make a choice at that point about resetting or moving to intermediate programming. But sometimes life doesn't let you get to that point where you're making that choice, where just the demands are such that you just don't have the time for 3 days a week an hour. I mean, by the end of your LP, you're not in there for an hour anymore.
Right.
You're in there for like an hour and a half.
Right.
And people just sometimes don't have the time. And so like, I recently had someone asking me about that. Like, he's got a new job. He just recently moved to New York City. The program that he was able to do previously, on his LP, he's not able to do now. He's had a couple business trips that have interrupted things. And his question was, how much am I missing out on in terms of gains because I haven't finished this LP properly? Right. And so, I mean,
and that's good because it's, what is properly? I mean, what do we mean by properly? Where is there
haven't done it by the book?
Is there an end? I mean, I always tell people, and I'm sure you do too. I say, when we talk about the linear progression, people go, I mean, no one really knows what I'm saying when they come into the gym. I just put them on a program, right? But I'll say, yeah, you can expect to be on this program probably for anywhere between 3 and 5 months. If you're a real outlier, 6 months, where you keep adding weight. For most people, for most working people, for most adults who have lives, who have kids, who are kind of average, people, like, maybe not even athletic, it's going to be probably 3 months. I typically see 3, maybe 4 months at the gym of my adults who come in to train. And that is primarily observational. I mean, people don't grind out reps. They don't keep grinding reps out and grinding reps out and grinding reps out. And I make that choice based on the person. I might continue somebody for 3 reps or until they hit 2 reps. And then eventually we decide we need to make an overhaul for their program. But we're changing programs. We're probably changing the program, even that program, a month into it. We're starting to make small changes here. But yeah, let's backtrack. Let's go about it. So the question that we talked about at the end of the last podcast, this is off camera, was, how much will I lose in terms of gains if I move to a less time consuming program than grinding out the reps at the end of an LP, right? So and we say following the program, we mean like, grinding reps out.
But you're also talking about like, you were just recently describing people who are coming in to your gym specifically and saying, I want to get stronger without necessarily having prior knowledge of starting strength or having read any of the books.
Exactly.
So that's one situation, somebody who maybe doesn't have expectations laid out for them. And then there's other people who come in who have read the books and who are expecting. And I mean, like I always kind of start by reminding them that like that's like your best case scenario laid out in the book. And it's, probably like a 20-something-year-old football player that is the model for that LP.
17, 18, right.
Yeah. Who's got all the time in the world. And training is their number one priority. And their work is maybe, like a part-time summer job, hourly, that sort of thing. It's not necessarily a career with ebbing and flowing demands.
Right.
And so like, first I generally just start out by pointing out that difference. But like people, when they come in with those expectations based on what they've read, usually their expectations are starting out on false footing. Like they're not recognizing that difference. They're not recognizing that that's like your best case scenario, and nobody lives in, a perfect scenario. So kind of just readjusting.
Expectations.
That expectation is sort of usually where I start.
I mean, so when this person's, so going back to your client, what was his concern? So what was was he?
Well, I'm sorry. I got lost in the middle of what I was saying. But the other thing is like the way the LP is sort of described in terms of rest time between sets. And this is kind of how it came up with this client in particular is, like as the reps get heavier, and the sets get harder, the rest time is likely to increase. And sort of a guideline that I use is if I'm dealing with a regular person, I don't really want their rest time on heavy sets to exceed 5 minutes. Exactly. But that's not that's not how it's presented in a lot of the starting strength literature. You see the recommendation to wait as long as is necessary in order to get all the reps. And so I have people who have that expectation, like I'm going to need to rest 10, 15 minutes before, between my heavy sets. And so my heavy bench is taking me 45 minutes, like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, if they come in with that expectation, that's kind of where they start to realize first, like, I literally just don't have time to spend 45 minutes benching and not have done anything else because originally I would be done everything by this point.
Yeah. No.
So,
so let's talk about that. Let's talk about what happens when things get heavy, like heavy enough where you're starting to find yourself grinding reps. Like, why would it be better to switch, why is it better to switch to a less time consuming program? It depends.
Yeah, I know. Well, see, it is an unanswerable question.
Yeah.
Was what I said also. Like, I cannot tell you the number of pounds, absolute weight on the bar that you are, quote unquote, missing out on by not continuing to grind through and waiting 15 minutes. But I can tell you that you're making choices right now that are probably compromising the amount of sleep that you're getting, that are probably compromising the amount of time that you have to devote to meal prep or enjoying your life, or flat out not hating going to the gym. And all of those things add up also negatively towards like weight that you might actually like lose out on as well. So maybe it's a wash. And so there's really no way to answer that question, but just you get back to that idea of consistency. Yeah. What can we do, right? Like, so add an extra little bit to get as strong as possible, as quickly as possible, using the most muscle mass over the greatest range of motion, right? For as many years as possible, right? Like for the duration, right? So if we're going to keep pushing this, keep adding 2.5 pounds, 5 pounds, whatever it is, wait 15 minutes, and you can't fit that into your life, you're going to chuck it out the window and go find something else that does fit into your life.
Yeah. I mean, there's, and this comes down to, again, do you have a coach or are you training by yourself with no coach? Because that's, and we've talked about this before, people come in to the gym for like form checks. They'll come in for, a 2-hour clinic with us, with a coach. And usually they work with Diego. And sometimes these are people who've been training themselves and they're having a hard time with the weights, right? It's getting heavy. Well, typically they should have changed their program probably 3 or 4 months prior to coming in to see us. That's why things are heavy. That's why they're squatting high. That's why they can't improve, because their program should have changed. But instead, what they've been doing is grinding out rep after rep after rep because the program called for X, Y, or Z. And then they come in, and then we drop the weight down, 50 pounds. We strip the bar, and we're like, the program should have changed. That is the hardest part. We can all start the program. We can all read the book. We can all watch a video, start to put weight on the bar, start to practice, and then we get to a certain point where if we're still deadlifting every day and it's 2 months into the program, unless we started really, really light, like really, really light, we can't. If we're still adding 5 pounds or 10 pounds to a squat or a deadlift, or if we're still adding 5 and also now we're squatting high, or we can't we're grinding out reps, it's because the program should have changed. We should have been adding 5 pounds. We probably should have had a light day in there somewhere for the squat instead of squatting heavy, every day. And I have to watch that with some of my lifters, with some of my own lifters, what I see in person all the time, and go, whoa, wait, how long have you been with me now? Because if I don't monitor like certain people, they're just going to keep going. And it's usually the younger ones. My older lifters don't do that. They come right to me. What do I do today? And we go through their program. So they're more conscientious than the younger ones who are just like antsy and ready to go.
Well,
right, exactly. So, then we have to kind of say to them, okay, you can't keep deadlifting. It's been 2 months and you're so dead, right? But that's usually the case. So it's programming. And will you, as you're finishing out, and that's a sticky point. It's like, well, when do you change program? When do you adjust your program? Unless you have a coach who can see you and observe the bar speed and the weight and the reps and, and look at your book, you may not know. You may just kind of keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And that is usually when people say, yeah, I tweaked my back last week, or I injured this. It's because they have been grinding and grinding and grinding because they don't know where to actually make the change in their program. What do I do?
Yeah, and along those lines, if somebody is training on their own and without a coach, Rory Alter wrote a nice article for Starting Strength about I think it was called The Reset, which kind of helps to walk people through that process of making the decision about, whether to do a reset on their LP, when and how that should happen, what the indicators are for that,
right.
Or should you be moving to intermediate programming? But even with intermediate programming, I have people, if I've set out a program or there's a way that they're progressing, and then life interferes, how much am I losing out on? So that question can come up not just on the LP, but also on intermediate programming. And again, it's the same answer, right? I'm more concerned. Well, it depends. There's no way nobody has a crystal ball. You can't run two programs simultaneously. One, you continue on this trajectory.
And the other one,
you change, right? You got to pick one path or the other. You don't end up with an opportunity to compare. But, ultimately, I always feel like there's another additional caveat in there for as long as possible, which is helpful, I think, in helping people evaluate or reassess, okay, what am I really missing out on? And how would that question apply 5 years from now if I continue on course A versus switching to course B?
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's a good article if you don't have a coach to kind of guide you through that.
And that is by far, it's almost like, when people come to our camps, we spend most of the time, obviously, lifting. We have the lecture, we have the practical component, we have the programming at the end. And the programming lecture we usually try to do 45 minutes. Because we really want to have a good programming section, a good lecture. That is a day in itself. And we had that.
Well, haven't you done that as a separate?
We did that. And we want to bring that back and we cram so much into that, and it could have been a 2-day, because that is the hardest part of training is when do I switch? What do I need to do now? How do I've gotten to this certain point. I've been training for a year even. Something needs to change. Something's always going to have to change. Nothing works long-term forever, right? Indefinitely. So I mentioned, Diego said to me, he goes, well, what do you, what's the subject of your podcast today? So I kind of briefly told him, and he said, well, in the long term, nothing. You're not going to lose anything. He goes, in the short term, the short term, when you switch to a new program, and we have an intermediate program that we switch people to after they pretty much have gotten to a point where things are heavy and they're not going to make more progress, and you can see the form breaking down considerably. That's when we switch them. And yes, we take weight off the bar, and I tell them, we're going to take weight off the bar. This is a new program. You're not going to hit any PRs for the next month, maybe month and a half even. And then you will. And their training sessions go from about an hour and a half to 2 hours to an hour or an hour and 15, depending on, the person and the weights. But what you see is a completely different lifter, because the first 3-4 months they're training, they're learning the program. They're learning how to lift. They're trying to figure out how to load their bar. They're getting tons of feedback. They're getting tons of cues, lots of coaching. Now they come to this new program. The weight comes off the bar. They've done those weights before, but they're a hell of a lot better at that. Their execution of the lifts are better. Their whole the way they approach their train sessions is different, and and their rest time is a little bit less now because the weight's a little bit lighter, so they don't have to rest as long. But they know that as the weight gets heavier, they're going to start to put that rest time back in. The rest time's only going to be about 5 minutes. I stick to that rule for them. I do not tell people rest as long as you need to. I say 5 minutes, and I really try to tell people do not rest between your warm-ups. Please. And because that's what people do. People make the mistake of resting between their warm-ups, and that extends the session.
Oh, that'll kill it. Like, and that'll just make it take hours and hours.
So, but some people, I have to explain to them, you don't have to rest. I'm like, no, your warm-up should take 5 minutes. You should be at your work set weight.
To add the new weight to the bar.
You should be at your work set weight.
Maybe wait a little bit before, you're 90% and your first work set.
Yeah. So in terms of losing,
because you can load it.
I feel like you're going to make much more gains if you switch to a program sooner than later. And as a coach, and I see, and I talked about this earlier, observation. I can watch somebody. I can see the fear in that person's eyes or the excitement. And if it's fear, I have to switch.
It's the same thing, Emily. Physiologically, it's the same thing.
The same fear and excitement. I had a
just
lifter.
Depends on interpretation.
True. I had a lifter, and this comes down to, I tell people, when it gets hard, that's when it gets exciting. And they look at me like, what are you talking about? I'm like, that's when it's going to really be exciting, when it gets heavy, because then you have to dig deep into yourself and say, okay, I can do this, right? That's the psychological, that's when the mental aspect of the training comes in. But I had a lifter a few years ago who started with us, and he was a month into his LP when the fear, you could see the fear in his face of he had to add 5 pounds to that squat. And immediately I said, do a top set and then take the weight off and do 2 back offs. He was a month in. I was going to lose him if I had said to him, gotta do 3 sets of 5, man. I'm sorry. That's the program. I don't care that you were scared to death of that bar, but this program calls for that. Exactly. But no, as a coach, right. I could see if I want him, and I want him to train, and he wants to train. He wants to get stronger. I know and I want him to stick around. We're going to have to drop this weight right away. We're going to have to do a top set and back offs. 2, 3, 3 years later, I still had it.
You're still there. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, it was like you had to do that as a coach. You have to know your lifters. You have to, and you have to understand that not everybody's going to come in with that mentality of like, got it, 3 sets of 5, no matter what, can't be a wuss, got to do it. And then you have to have some people, you're like, you know what? Take it. Let's take that weight off the bar. The person goes,
and that's where it gets to. You're training the whole lifter. The lifter is not just a system of muscles and joints and bones and whatever. You've got a whole package that you've got to deal with, you read the book and that sets out the general structure. And I don't think anybody would argue that that's going to be a blueprint for everyone.
No.
But when you're reading it on your own, a lot of times, it's like surprising how many people come away with the expectation that is exactly the way this lifting experience is going to unfold for me. Otherwise, I'm doing something wrong.
Take it at face value. Nothing should be taken at face value. I mean, even when I give people, and none of you can see this, but I'm showing Rebecca a spreadsheet. I'll give a spreadsheet to somebody of like a program. And I'll say, this is not set in stone. These numbers are not set in stone. These percentages are not set in stone. The lifts are not even set in stone. This is going to be a blueprint for you to follow. And we're going to make a change. We're going to make changes as we go along. And I mean, just having that new program, it's a placebo effect, right? That changes people's mentality right there. Well, all of a sudden they can do more.
Yeah. Well, and also the mental aspect of it, like we're talking with the listener who wrote into you, that sort of game day,
right,
adrenaline rush, which people will interpret differently. Some people see that as exciting. Some people see that as fear inducing or stressful or whatever. Right. But you've got to make another adjustment when you get the program, explaining to people at the beginning, you're not going to be hitting PRs on a weekly or daily basis. This is going to be, I guess initially on your intermediate program, it's on a weekly basis as opposed to a daily basis. But then you get a little bit deeper into it, and it's like you're going to be weeks before you are possibly going to hit another PR.
Right.
But it's all a learning process too.
Absolutely.
And it's like, also, it's not just learning your lifter, if you're the coach, but it's learning your own body. Like I have a lot of lifters that I'm working with online who basically what I'm doing is equipping them to be able to make calls in the moment about what is appropriate for them. And I've got one lifter that I started working with in person. He's local to me, but then during COVID, he switched to the online programming, and that just like works better for his life right now.
Sure.
And initially, like I would, like I've learned, but like he has my cell phone number. So he'd like text me. I get texts at all these random times like, oh my gosh, coach, I did my first work set. And it just, this happened or the other thing happened. And what should I do now? Right. So like, I kind of like just kept talking them through the decision-making process of, am I going to switch to a back off set or try and keep pushing what the program says today based on the feedback that my body just very clearly gave me, and being okay with going off the program and being confident about making that call for himself. So now we're to a point where it's like he's on True Coach, and like I can check in once a week and see that he's made those calls mid-session, and I'm like, good, we just move on from there. There's like, it's not set in stone. This is, the roadmap, and there might be some bumps in the road or a little pothole or whatever, and you just steer around it.
Right. Yeah. And I think, it's good when the person has a coach, like he can contact you immediately. And you're very responsive, because that's why you're an excellent coach. And so you can give him an immediate response. Or at least he can learn, if you don't give it right away, but you give it later, he's made a call. He's decided for himself, and you've given him those tools to do that. And that's, in person, I can do that, right away. I can make a call immediately. But sometimes I may miss a lifter. I'm walking around the gym, coaching everybody. I might miss what somebody has done. I might miss what someone's done. So they'll come to me later and say, you know what, I did my top set, felt a little funky. I stopped at 3 instead of doing 5. I was like, that's cool. What happened? And this happened. What should I do next time? I'm like, so we'll try for a set of 5 next time, or maybe we'll do 2 sets of 3. Okay. But they make their own calls. People learn grinding reps. I want to talk about that, because that's that's really, really goes. Lifters should learn how to grind a rep. Yes. We should learn what a heavy rep feels like. We should learn how to stay with it, because that's where we find, oh yeah, I stayed back in the press. That's why the bar kept going. It was slow, but you told me to trust to stay in that position. I did. Or that squat was slow, but you came up because you stayed in your hips. You didn't lift your chest, but it was slow. That's kind of a grind. That's okay. But not every rep should feel like that. Not every rep should feel like, oh my God, am I gonna survive this? It should happen so that you understand, yes, that's what heavy feels like. And that's why you stay in position. That's why you trust your hips. That's why you keep pushing with your back when the bar is going up in the bench. That's why you stay over the bar and keep pushing with your legs when you're deadlifting, and it slows down, right? It's okay to have that, and to identify what that it feels like when it gets heavy. But I made it because I stayed in position. However, if you're grinding out all the reps, eventually the form's gonna break down. Something's gonna change. Your chest may come up and you might make that lift, but to the detriment of what? You may not have anything left in you for any other set. Because
you end up with like an injury.
Yeah, because your brain, you've used so much of yourself for that, for that set, for that one rep. Why? What was the point? What was the point of trying to get that rep? But that's hard for a new lifter who's just starting out, who's getting into, who's doing this on their own.
But even sometimes, I think I've talked about this before too. Like the time I had my belt on funky, and it was like digging in between my ribs, but I was like, nope, the program calls for, right? And that was early. That was like relatively early on. Right. And I was like, okay, that's a valuable lesson. But there's, like people who have, like a streak of, I don't know, let's call it stubbornness, or people pleasing, or perfectionism, or whatever it is, right, are more prone to something like that. Like I've got plenty of people that I coach where like they'll do something like from a coach's perspective, like coach's RPE looks like maybe a 7.5, and they'll stop and be like, oh, that was really heavy. I'm done. I can't do anymore. Right. So there's people like that. And then you get people at the other end that, try and do
grinding reps and going, oh, that was an 8. what wall was at an 8? You barely made that lift. I call that a 10.5. And I'm good at that. I can say to myself, yeah, I'm done. Yeah, that was definitely not what I thought it was going to be, you know? So yeah, you have people on two ends of the spectrum, those who will keep pushing, and then those who will be like, yeah, I think that was really too heavy. And I'm like, you had 10 reps in you. What? Really?
Yeah.
Really? I'm like, yeah, but that's a new person. That's somebody who everything is hard, right? And we know that.
Well, I mean, hard. You get people who are new where everything's hard, but then you get people who just carry that attitude throughout. You know, like, I'm not feeling it today.
Yeah. And so you have to, I think that the fear of losing gains, the most gains possible, where is that? Don't even think about that, because if you're starting this, ideally, you're going to be doing this for a long time. And it's okay if you take a break from it. I have a couple lifters who have returned to me after 3-4 years, not being with us. I had a young woman who just joined us a couple months ago, and she was with us back in like 2017 at the old gym. She was a student then. Now she's a resident. So she's, medical school. She's doing fabulously. I mean, she's beyond where she was the last time, she was with us. And I think she's smaller than she was the last time she was with us. I mean, Maureen is a petite young woman and strong, and has just excelled because she remembered a lot from when she was training with us. Even those couple months, she remembered a lot. So she's like taking off and doing great. Another client has been returned to us after 3 years of being off and trying to find a gym that's going to work for him. Nick's been back for about 2 months now, I want to say 2 months, maybe 3 months. He has taken off. So just because you decide to stop for a little bit, you can always start back again. I mean, these two are perfect examples of like having done this at all for how many years, jump back into it, riding a bike, and now they're racing.
Yeah.
Like literally. And Nick we haven't changed his program yet. He's been still adding weight to his bar. He has not slowed down. Maureen, we've had to adjust her program. We started her off and then we made adjustments, and because she's much smaller, the weights are, it's a different matter. Bigger guy, smaller lady, but the adjustments we made were appropriate for her to continue to make the progress, and she has. With him, he's still going. He's still adding weight to his bar. He's kind of still on his linear progression. He did it 3 years ago, took 3 years off, and now he's back at it. So you don't lose much. In fact, you might gain more.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, right. Like, because the other, like I was explaining before, there's other trade-offs that you may not even recognize. And those are things that may be compromising your recovery and may be affecting your ability in the moment to be able to get the reps. Or might, if you're grinding a lot of reps and are more prone to an injury, right? So there's all these other factors that people generally don't consider when they're trying to answer for themselves or when they're asking that question about how much am I gonna lose.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it comes down to, whether or not you're thinking, like your perspective, whether or not you've added that additional caveat of for as long as possible if you're considering longevity.
Right.
And so you get that from like a coach or from somebody who's been lifting for many years. My dog.
The dog's back. Rebecca's dog's back. It starts barking. She has now muted her video.
We got UPS next door, and my dog feels like she needs to guard that property too.
This is how we keep it real on the 5x3 Radio podcast. There's nothing fake about us here. I'm upstairs.
My dog is like so hackly right now. She's shaking it off.
Shaking it off.
Shake it off.
Yeah.
But like, if you're able to sort of consider the long-term perspective and view the bigger picture, and, I think the question of how much am I going to lose in this moment is probably only worth asking if you've got a meet in the next couple of weeks or something.
Exactly. Sure. Exactly.
Right? Yes. That's a valid question at that point. But if you're just kind of going through your regular life and you're trying to figure out how you can fit lifting into your busy life over a long span of time, then there's really no way to answer that question. And it's also really not a helpful question to be asking.
Because you never know when you're going to get hit by a car on a Saturday night, and the first thing that crosses your mind after you've been hit and you kind of come to after you can't breathe for a few seconds, and you go, first thought, I'm going to have to deal with this now. We just got hit. I'm not going to be home in time to go to bed.
And is this going to screw up my press?
Ding, 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 ding. Exactly. So the next thing that went through my head was,
so well.
tomorrow is a training session. Sunday is my training session. It is my heavy press day. I've got to meet in a month. I have a meet in a month. I've been on schedule. This is going to screw up my schedule now.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? Are my arms going to work? Am I going to be able to get my heavy press? And guess what? I had to take off Sunday because my husband told me to, and my mother told me to, and my father told me
all
to.
The time Diego can't tell you what to do.
I was literally threw my arms around him and I said, "Can I please go to the gym?" He said no. And so we took a walk instead, and I went and had brunch. But I went in on Monday and my press was okay, wasn't stellar. And then Tuesday I tried to squat and the bar was rolling all over my back because I couldn't get tight because my neck and my upper back are sore from the the whiplash the impact. So I was like, you never know when something like that's going to happen and screw up your meet. So yes, am I going to lose some gains? Yeah. And when it happened again, I purposely did this. I did a strongwoman contest, right? Back in July. I was cruising along with my squat. Decided to do a contest. That means I had a break program to train for that. And when I came back, it took me a couple weeks to get back onto a good track with my squat again, my heavy squat and my press. And then there's vacation. And you know what? The older you get, the harder it is to kind of get that back. It takes a couple weeks. It takes a couple weeks. I missed 2 heavy squat days and a volume squat day when I was on vacation. So that screwed me up a little bit. So this thought of like, I'm going to lose my gains if you know what? Life happens. And the thing you have to do is just get back on track with your programming, and
so we're talking about like perspective and how that, is this like, I'm wondering if you ever get a question like this, and do you find that it generally comes from beginning or novice lifters? Do you ever have that question like from a lifter that has been training in some capacity or other for a number of years, or is it pretty much always?
As I'm shaking, people can't see me. No. I'm shaking my head no. I'm shaking my head no, and I'm shaking my head yes to the new people. People want to know, and not every new person. I think people who are the ones who may not stick around long term because they want a quick, immediate answer fix.
Yeah.
I think it's those people. Where am I going to be? I don't know. I don't know what weight's going to be on your bar when you start, and I have no idea where you're going to be in 3 months unless you actually show up and stay with the program. Right. And it comes down to that. The more consistent you are, the more progress you'll make. I sent an email out this past week with the training schedule, and I just said, just a reminder, even if you have 45 minutes, get in here. Consistency equals progress. And then 2 of my ladies were like, that was for us, wasn't it? I was like, they're like, we knew it, Emily. We knew it was for us. And I was like, well, it wasn't directly to you. She goes, but they saw that. They're like,
it's just a good general reminder.
It's a reminder.
You're the one that made me think of the good general reminder.
And these 2, they have no problem working hard. It's not that at all. It's just busy lives. It's called life, right? It's called busy lives. But they know that it's okay to just come in and squat. They said to me, they came in one the other night. We have a half an hour. What should we do? Squat. Okay. And they did. And it was fabulous, So sometimes it's just a matter of doing that. The ones who are concerned about the gains are usually people who have just started. And I'm like, that is the least of your concern.
Well, yeah, I think people who just started, and I guess I'm also thinking sometimes also it's like we've talked a little bit around the topic of people who are all or nothing perfectionists.
Yes.
And I think it also fits that personality as well. Like I read the book and I was promised a 400-pound squat if I followed this program, and I'm stuck at 250, like whatever it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's, someone who wants to chin up so badly. And I have to be, I'm honest. I'm like, you know what? I can get you doing a push-up faster than I can get you doing a chin-up. I said, and I will say this, that a chin-up, you've got to be, that weight plays a big part of that. and just athleticism, I mean, and getting in here and continuing to practice rowing, doing modified chin-ups and whatever you can do. I said, but I can get you. Chin-ups are hard for females. This is a female. Chin-ups are going to be hard. You're going to have to be patient with yourself. I can get you doing a push-up faster because you're using a lot more muscle mass when you're doing that. You've got your legs involved. The chin-up, it's all upper body. And, body weight plays a big role. So
I had this client one time. Pull-ups were part of his program. He went away on vacation. He came back and he was like knocking pull-ups out, right? Like you wouldn't expect this after vacation. Like, and he had done some training when he was on vacation and stuff too. It wasn't like a resting vacation. Right. He had access to weights and that sort of thing. He came back, or I don't know, it was like a couple of weeks actually. And he's doing like and I just look at him like, you lost weight, didn't you? And he's like, dang. He's like, I thought you would think I got stronger. It's like, no, you lost weight.
Well, when I lost weight during quarantine, I made a point of actually working with my friend who's a dietitian, Robert Santana, and I dropped a fair number of pounds over the course of the time that we were in quarantine. I kind of did the opposite of most people. I spent that time measuring my food and figuring out how much I was actually eating, because I was getting a lot of acid reflux again, and it's always when I overeat. So I started doing chin-ups, and my chin-ups got really good. Like they got really good. So what I did was I added 10 pounds to myself. I put a weight belt on and put another 10 pounds. I dropped 10 pounds by that point, and it was a lot harder to pull myself up with that weight. So that's important to recognize, and you have to understand that. But then you can also be like a Diego who can do chin-ups no matter what body weight he is. He's just good at doing chin-ups. He's also was a climber when he was younger. That's carried over into his training. He definitely slowed down his mountain biking as he gained more weight and more muscle when we were mountain biking. We haven't been mountain biking 10 years, but when we started training, the mountain biking definitely slowed down a bit because he had more weight. He was carrying a lot more weight than he was when he was 155 pounds. So that makes a difference. So. But, in general, I think people who, if you're straight up and you're honest with them, and you have the honest answer is, I don't know. It depends. It's going to depend on you and how much time you're willing to put into this. And honestly, you're not going to lose much. You're not going to lose. You will have not. I don't know how much more weight you would have put on the bar.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's a hard question to answer.
There's so many things in life that have like an I don't know and it depends answer, right? Yes. Like I'm thinking about that because, like we were just at the orthopedic doctor again the second time. Like Felicia keeps spraining her ankle, right? It's a non-specific injury. Right. And so the recovery for that is like, it's vague, right? There's not something specific that requires surgery.
Nope.
So the answer, how long is this going to take to heal? It depends. Like that is a frustrating answer for people. It is also not a good sales approach, right? Yeah. So if you're trying to sell somebody a program at your gym and you're going to say, you'll get stronger, but I don't know how much stronger because it depends, right? Like as opposed to like, hey, here's a surefire way.
Sure. But you can say to the person, it depends if you show up every week. Right. That's what I say to people. I'm like, I don't know how much weight you'll put on the bar. It will all depend on your consistency. This program requires consistency. That's why I talk about like my two different programs. I've got my boot camp program, right? My basic training, and I've got our lifting program. You can miss a boot camp class and it's not going to matter. You come in, you still can goblet squat. You miss a couple training sessions, forget about it. That weight's going to feel a hell of a lot heavy if you try to put that weight up again. And you're going to be like, well, what happened? I'm like, well, you missed, 5 sessions. Of course you can't squat that weight anymore. Your brain doesn't understand what you're doing. Neither does your body. So that's going to require a lot more consistency than just kind of fooling around with the dumbbells and the kettlebells. Yeah. True, you might lose some there too, but your body's not going to nearly know there as it will in the weight room. So I'll say it depends. If you make a point of showing up week in and week out, the consistency, more consistent you are, the more progress you'll make. And the person goes, got it. Because most people just want to show up. and they understand that if they do, they'll feel better about making it in. And then some people don't need that kind of encouragement. They don't need that kind of motivation. They don't need to be told they need to be consistent. They already are. It's just part of their lifestyle. It's part of their
week. Like you're also describing people, like we've talked about this before, who have like a process versus product approach, right? So the people who have a process approach, they want to do the training, they want to get stronger. Stronger can be sort of defined nebulously, right? But there's other people who are like, I want a 400-pound squat, or I want, like they'll have a weight goal, an absolute weight goal, and then they want you to tell them how much time it's going to take to get there if they're doing the program. Like they're, and even if you're consistent, then there's so many
variables. There's so many variables, and
that are outside of an individual's control.
Yeah, that's why running specials that say 8 weeks to a bikini body or 5 weeks.
Such BS.
It's ridiculous. It's BS is right. You know how long? I mean,
it sells, but that also contributes to this culture and this mindset that people have, right? Where if I didn't get what I was promised, or if I didn't get what I expected within this 8-week time frame, then I'm going to move on to the next thing. Right. And this is right, like, so maybe if you're asking that question, how much am I going to lose? Like maybe, like you're saying, these are maybe people that don't stick around. Maybe these are people who are looking for that kind of popularly advertised approach towards fitness or towards training.
Because I've never had anybody. I mean, I've just moved a bunch of people to a different program, and all of them I told them, we're dropping the weight, take it down 10 or 12%. Here are the numbers that I figured out are for you. And they looked at those numbers. I actually give them alternative numbers. I'll say you can either drop it down to be really conservative and give yourself a lot of wiggle room to this number, to this weight, or this is 10% off. So it's 10 or 12% off. You decide where you want to start. Because I mean, I know they're going to start just fine at either number. It's just going to be how much more I call it wiggle room are they going to have. No one ever says to me, "Oh, well, I made all those gains. Why can't I push it a little bit more to see how much?" They can feel it's heavy. Like I'm squatting high now. My eyeballs almost came out of my head. That last rep, I almost thought I was going to kill myself. I mean, when they get to that point, they're clear. Like, oh, thank God, I'm taking the weight off the bar. I mean, it's that relief. Those are people who are going to stick around. Those are the people who stick around. The people who question immediately from the beginning. And you can still see them trying to push weight out and won't listen to they're eventually just going to probably stop, because it's just frustrating then, because they're trying to push a certain amount of weight and they just keep hitting a brick wall with it. So when they finally do listen, if they listen, then maybe they'll start to make some progress again. Some people left to their own devices will do whatever they think they should do instead of listening to a coach, like my older client who's learned his lesson and will never do what he did again. But many of my lifters understand, like they get to a certain point and it's going to have to change, and they're okay because they see the progress they've made and they know they're going to make even more, and because they're in for the long haul.
Yeah. I really don't get that question often. Mm-hmm. But it was an online client, and I think just the changes in his life due to the new job and all of that, it just brought it up in his mind.
I think it's like my client who I talked about in the beginning, who she's got that big job at work and she can't make it in, and is she going to lose? How much is she going to lose? Or I'm like, you're not going to lose much. In fact, right now we are where we are. You will get back there and better the minute she said, will I be able to come back in? And she said, will I be able to pick back up? Will I get better? Like, will the weights go up again? I'm like, absolutely. Once we're able to start on the program again. I said, but you'll come back. And that's why I pointed out to the two clients who were, the one client who was there, who had not been with me for almost 4 years, and where she is now, above and beyond from the last time. So you do remember. I mean, again, I said to her, you got on the bar and you squatted 135. The fact that you're squatting 135 and you told me you were out at the CrossFit gym for 3 years and the most you ever squatted was 115. You've been with me for a year. We got you to 170. That's when you were consistently coming 3 days a week. Then life happens. but you're still your body, you're stronger, you can still do it. So you will get back there. And it was that relief of, okay, yeah, you're right. I will just need to wait.
Yeah. And it's like, I think for the most part, people that we work with, and this, person that raised the question in the first place, is like, you can kind of talk them through that. You can coach through that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I do want to talk about the next podcast. Well, we have Kelly's interview, obviously, that just happened. So that was, we just put that out. But we talked about wanting to do a podcast about talking about protein and how much protein. And I was just listening to Iron Culture today with Eric Helms and Omar. And I'm not going to pronounce Omar's last name because I can't even come to it right now. But Rascal Apparel, he's the guy who owns Rascal Apparel, all the fun T-shirts. But they've got a great podcast. Diego listens to them all the time. And the podcast that I was listening to today was from a couple months ago, but it was We Were Wrong. And they were basically discussing times in their over the years where they've talked about a subject that they now have thought differently about. They've kind of, have a different perspective on. And one of those topics was on the amount of protein that someone should get. And that was Eric. That was Eric's. He's a scientist. He's a coach. He's a bodybuilder. So he's got a great physique. So he knows his nutrition. And it was terms of how much protein does an actual person need? Someone who's lifting, someone who's strength training.
An actual person.
And I feel like my definitely over the years as a coach and learning myself more about nutrition better, I have definitely changed my mind about how much protein intake a person should have. Like in the beginning, back in 2011, I was like, it's got to be your body weight. Whatever your body weight is, that's how much you need to get, if not more. Now I'm like, nah, you need to get around this much. Like if you're getting 100, 120, you're good. You need to get at least 100. And then if you're at this weight, you could be about 30 pounds under, 30 grams under what you weigh kind of thing. So I've definitely changed my mind about that because it was really like cut and dry, like you need to get this much. And that's what I was trying to consume. I was trying to consume a lot of protein and realizing it was just really hard to do. And I was drinking drinking a lot of shakes, a lot of protein shakes to do that. And I rarely, do that. I'm doing one today because I just trained this morning and then we're doing the podcast and I'm not going to eat lunch until later. So I wanted to make sure I got something in before I ate lunch. But overall, I don't drink too many shakes at all anymore because I get most of my protein from food. So I do want to do that podcast, something briefly about just our take on that and what we've read. And also, what we see in our lifters, especially my ladies who, when they start eating more protein, they generally find that they can train better. And that if weight loss is a goal of theirs at a certain time, they do start losing weight. Like their weight loss happens pretty quickly the minute they start to consume more protein. I think also they're just consuming more of something, so they're consuming less of something else. So the calorie intake just kind of changes. But that has by far been that's hands down. Anytime I have one of my ladies start to get over 100 grams of protein, because none of them do in the beginning, they start to see their changes in their weight and body composition.
You're already on the next podcast.
I know. So stay tuned for that one. We're going to wrap up here, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. If you have any comments or questions or, thoughts about what we've talked today or anything we've talked about in the past, feel free to email us. You can email me at emily@5by3.com or Rebecca at
cornerstonestrengthmaryland.com or gmail.com.
And also Rebecca's talked about a lot about her online clients. She does online coaching. I do online coaching. I think she does a lot more online coaching than I do because the gym kind of consumes me. So I try to limit how many, but she's a fantastic coach and does a lot of online coaching. So make sure you check out Rebecca's website.
Thanks, Emily.
You're welcome. I have to plug you. I've got the gym, but you've got the online scene down a lot stronger than I do. So I'd have to, if I have questions, I probably should come to you because I don't do as much. I just have the gym. It's just, it's harder to sit in front of a computer to watch people lift.
Yeah, that's right.
I watch them lift every day in person. And that will wrap up today. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, everybody, all my listeners.
I'm thinking ahead to the nutrition one.
I know. I want to start working on that.
I want you to remind me to tell the tater tot bar story, since it's nutrition related.
Tater tot bar story. I want all my listeners to remember that one. So if so you email me and go, don't forget tater tot bar story. We will make sure to. I'm gonna write that down now.
Not really protein.
Tater tot bar story.
Nutrition.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We will see you in a few weeks. Take care. Thanks, Rebecca.
Take care. And may everybody else have a Bones Day, too.
Bones Day. What was it called?
Bones Day.
Noodle? Be like Noodle.
Noodle the pug. Yeah. See, you don't have any like kids in your house watching TikTok. You don't know Noodle.
Noodle. Be like Noodle.
Yeah. Have a Bones Day. No, not when he's having a no Bones Day. Not a no Bones Day, a Bones Day.
Have a Bones Day, everybody.
Have a Bones Day.
Bye. Bye. Thanks for listening to 5x3 Radio with Emily and Rebecca. If you like our show and want to know more about 5x3 training, please visit us at www.5, that's F-I-V-E, the letter X, the number 3.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. To learn more about Rebecca, please visit her website, cornerstonestrengthmaryland.com. Thanks for listening and have a great week.